and today we are going to have an interview with Ihor. Hi, Ihor.
Hi,
CEO,
Tanya.
CEO of Applicature company. Applicature is a blockchain development agency that is focused on strategy, consulting, and blockchain solutions, ICO smart implementation, tech consulting, and so on. So, Ihor, thank you for this call. And first of all, please introduce yourself and your company a little bit, okay?
Sure. So good evening to you, Tanya. Thanks for accommodating this. Good morning to me. I'm here in Silicon Valley. You're there in Ukraine. Haven't met you for a while, but gonna meet soon, which is great. It's great that we actually can work as such a distributed team, which Applicature is. So quickly and briefly about myself, I am a CEO of the company and I'm the co-founder. I have technical background. I started my career as a developer and then shifted into technical management. And now my passion is about like discovering new challenges in technology and solving those challenges with talented developers. That's what I get the most excitement out of. And as a blockchain business, apparently we have a lot of ICO projects at the moment, which is like 80% in terms of like the amount of projects that we have. And then 20% is custom proof of concepts on blockchain. Definitely those are larger projects, but there is just a smaller amount of those. And I find both to be really valuable for for the overall efficiency that we are creating for the economy.
Okay, great. Thank you. So now tell me please about ICO department in your company. Can you please tell us about its operation? How does it work? And
Sure. So we mostly focus on technical side of the ICOs. Um, we've doing technical side a lot ourselves, and we've watched ICO organizers to also take care of other things like marketing, legal, etc. So we have gained a lot of experience in marketing as well. And because ICO as a process itself is all oriented towards technology, and usually all the questions they imply some technical aspects. So dev team
okay,
is probably like it's crucial to have a dev team in all other processes that you have in your ICO. And so we as an agency that provide ICO technical services, we stay involved in like the ICO overall. We find it to be super crucial for the success of the ICO.
okay,
So clients usually come to us at two different stages, or even three, I would say. So first stage and or first case is when they just have the concept, but they have to lay it all out. They have to figure out the token economics. They have to think about how the contributors will be incentivized, how to make the token attractive for exchanges, etc. So that's a highly custom consulting work that we do for clients. Second option is they already know what they gotta do. They already have a pretty good vision. They just need the technical organization of their ICO, which is a suite of smart contracts, ICO cabinets, any widgets on the website in terms of ICO tracking statistics, and definitely, pardon me, definitely the support during the ICO. And then the third case is clients tried working with someone else and then they decided to come to us.
okay. Um, okay, today, nowadays, it is very trendy to launch its own ICO. Uh, please tell us, does it match to every business, and uh, what should we know about before launching an ICO? And is it promising fundraising tool, actually?
I would put it this way. So putting the blockchain into your company description doesn't always make sense. It doesn't make sense to say, okay, now we are the blockchain company and we are going to put all our processes on blockchain because we want to tokenize um, our services or our assets, whatever.
Mhm.
So it's a little bit artificial in that respect. There are definitely use cases where blockchain is like super helpful. For example, if you have the intermediary or you have a lack of trust between the roles in the ecosystem, etc. That's where blockchain will be like superb, and we will devote a separate video for these use cases where we found blockchain to be helpful. But um, apart from blockchain, there is a process known as tokenization, which is we are trying to make the count of things, and we put this count of things, this accountability, this ledger on the blockchain in a distributed manner. So it could not be tampered with. It could not be um, changed at no time in the future. So it will stay immutable, and therefore we can trust it as a ledger of our whatever entries or records or tokens or things. All right. And in that respect, you basically can tokenize anything. Um, because of lack of regulation, or for example, or I would rather say you would need to comply with SEC in the US if you wanted to release your equity tokens, right? Which is quite a costly process. Like it's super expensive, it's super complicated. In order for you to do it, you like it's the same as going into the IPO, all right? So
Okay.
that's why we are not really seeing the tokenization of equity. But I think that in the future, 2 years from now, or let it be 5 years from now, we're gonna see the tokenization and democracy around the equity, and we all will be able to hopefully like invest into the equity of the a small coffee shop that you like visiting every day, because it's one of the most natural use cases for tokenization. But other than that, you can tokenize almost any service. All right, you can, and then your token will represent either the voucher to use the service or the voucher like a discount voucher, etc. And there is a lot of ways how to structure that in the right way so that it will incentivize early contributors, but it will also be a utility token. Um, we work a lot around about, or we work a lot on the such aspects as volatility, the incentives, and the total supply balance between the supply and demand, um, market making, etc., etc. So when we start working on the tokenization model, we take all these aspects into consideration, and then we come up with a plan that a founder can lay out in his white paper or yellow paper and
Mhm.
be very clear for the contributors.
Okay. So as for ICO, it is a very attractive format of crowdfunding without middlemen and intermediary platforms, right? So let's dig deeper into the technical part of ICO implementation. What are the most critical moments?
Um, right. So there are the known platforms for running the ICOs. Um, and apparently Ethereum is a leading solution for that,
Mhm.
and we tend to stick to it. There is definitely a lot of other platforms that might be even more efficient from the standpoint of transactions throughput, transaction cost, etc., etc. But in terms of the community support and the roadmap for future development, Ethereum is just a leading solution, and frankly, we are just sticking to the Ethereum. Um,
Okay.
instead of like diversifying and trying to be all over the place, we plan to focus on Ethereum and contribute to scaling of Ethereum either through Plasma or through our own modifications to the Ethereum network. For example, we have just came up with Ethereum proof of stake implementation of our own, and
Mhm.
we are deploying it to the public. So you use Ethereum smart contracts. That would be actually a suite of smart contracts to issue your own token, to accept contributions from your contributors, and decide on bonuses, discounts, etc., depending on how you envision your ICO mechanics and incentives. We usually also develop the smart contracts for, like, for example, hold smart contracts. So with someone, the arrangement could be that they would hold for X amount of months, but instead, in return, would have some premium to it. Uh, we develop the team vesting smart contracts. For example, you've got 10 or 20 people on your team, and they are on a vesting plan. So throughout like next 24 months or 36 months, they're gonna receive the equal amount of tokens every month.
Mhm.
So all in all, our suite covers all the major cases and needs that the project would need before the ICO, during the ICO, and post ICO. So
Okay, thank you.
that's the second part. Then next goes
Oh,
the
okay.
user. Uh, Next goes the user flow. If you wanted to ask that, or maybe you had another question.
Okay, let's continue.
Yeah.
I,
Okay.
I will ask after your answer, okay?
Right. Yep. And then
That's fine.
user flow is basically the widgets on the public pages on the website that would basically display all the statistics of the ICO, and the ICO cabinet, which is a standalone solution, a fully fledged dashboard for the contributors to be able to sign up, sign in, submit their documents for validation, pass the validation, um, receive the
Mm-hmm.
contribution instructions, do like follow through all the contribution steps
Mm-hmm.
inside the system, and then see their transactions actually in the transaction list inside the dashboard once they do those transactions.
Okay. So here, now let's talk about smart contracts, okay? What is the difference between traditional smart contract and between traditional contract and smart contract? And is it safe actually to write them and use them? Um, you just said that smart contracts are immutable and transparent. Please share experience
Yep.
about this.
So we can compare smart contracts to other notions, the contract and the software. So comparing the smart contract with the contract, once you have written the contract, it's basically set in stone, but you always have a chance to also write in an appendix and amend the conditions in terms of the contract in that way. It's not
Mhm.
always, and mostly not the case in the Ethereum smart contracts, because they they're quite limited in terms of their functionality, which I actually like, because it requires you to have a very strict thinking and very pragmatic thinking about what you're writing and what your code has to do and why it has to do it. So it has to be efficient, but you cannot basically change the smart contract once it has been deployed, and
Mhm.
moreover, you cannot add the appendix to it. You
Okay.
you cannot amend it easily if you did not instill that ability to like scale and connect additional libraries in the initial smart contract. And then comparing the smart contracts to the conventional software development and code, I would say the main difference is also in the fact that it has the immutable nature. So you have to think really well about uh, the business requirements, what it has to do, how it will do it, um, and B, security does matter. A single vulnerability can lead to all your valuable assets stored on smart contracts just being vanished in one transaction, and that's it. So once you deploy the smart contract, the only thing you can do is just watch the hackers trying to hack it, and you should have done all the homework before you have deployed the smart contract. That's why we basically have the process for that, which we call the token design framework. It's a multi-step process involving many team members in order to release the suite of smart contracts that are, industry standard, um, bulletproof in terms of security and reflection of business logic they have to implement.
Okay. What languages do you use?
Um, there are several languages for writing the smart contracts in Ethereum, but we stick to Solidity. It's a language similar to C++. It's
Mm-hmm.
strictly typed. It's very, but it's truncated though, so it provides less um, functionality through its syntax, but it makes you think in a very logically strict manner. You have to be very pragmatic about how you implement things and why you do it. So, in a way, smart contracts, um, I would say they return the software development industry back to those years when for planning before implementing was important.
Okay. Uh, about truffle framework. You use truffle framework, yeah?
Yep.
And what solutions does it offer, this framework?
Right. As you're mentioning the tools now, let's probably like just walk over the process that we have um, for developing smart contracts overall. I would like to share my screen and just show you the
It will be perfect.
our framework. Give me a moment. Great. So we came up with this design framework um, that basically helps us focus on a successful delivery for such the critical things as smart contracts on the main network. The key phases that we have is the conceptual token design, where we discuss what has to be implemented and why it has to be implemented. We could give some suggestions about improving the concept and the mechanics based on our experience and what we see as trending in the industry and where the industry is heading. After that, we go into the implementation itself. Um, we stick to ERC20 in terms of tokens. We would shift to ERC223 once it is the result and final um, specification adopted by exchanges, which is super important. Um, we also have a good grasp of ERC 721 now, which is good for things like standalone items versus accounting money that can be divided into cents, etc.
Mhm.
Once we have developed the smart contract, they get covered with the auto tests, and so these auto tests are actually implemented with the Truffle framework, Mocha and Chai testing tools for JavaScript. So we respectively use JavaScript as a coding language.
Mhm.
Um, After that, we do the customer experience testing, which actually is the deployment of the smart contracts on the testnet. Our manual experience, our manual testers, they they actually have the checklist of all the functions that they have to do, and so they basically run through all the life cycle of the smart contract for both positive cases, so the cases that the smart contract should be able to execute, and the negative cases. So making sure that whatever should not be executed is not executed to restrict any third-party access to the smart contract functions that are designed for the owner, for example. Then
Mhm.
after that, we do the acceptance and review. Um, these are actually two-phase process. First, we do the internal acceptance. We always have a peer review of the code of the contract. So a second developer would just take the requirements in a Google document form, for example, and compare the smart contract to the requirements that he is seeing, and then pinpoint to any items or questions that they have. And after that, we have the presentation of the smart contract suite to the top management of the company, after which the smart contracts would go for the customer acceptance. Then a customer is able to either deploy the smart contract by themselves, or we can help do that. Um,
Mhm.
and after that, there might be the support in terms of questions and answers in regards to all kinds of questions. Yep. So that's about it. That's the framework that we have come up with throughout our um, work with the ICOs and non-ICO smart contracts, and it proved to be pretty solid. So we would recommend everybody to use such kind of framework.
Okay, it was great. So,
Yep. I also liked the questions, Tanya. I don't know how much time do you have. Maybe we have to run now.
yep, I think yep.
Yeah, great. Um,
But it was very informative and very useful conversation. Thank you for this, and wish you all the best for your new undertakings.
Thank you, Tanya.
And
Enjoy your evening.
okay, have a nice
Talk to
day.
you very soon. Bye bye. Take
Bye
care.
bye.